So, hi, friends. I am Holly Berman, and it's been an honor and a privilege to be at Congregation HaShem my whole adult life, beginning to teach there in 1992. And so I have been part of watching these amazing people that we're going to talk with today, and some of our guests as well, grow up at the synagogue and grow up into incredible adults that I am excited to learn from. And the goal of this evening is a fewfold. We are going to listen and really hear and see someone and understand their story. We're going to learn their personal stories, learn about their struggles and triumphs. We're going to try and understand how we can actively support and engage the transgender and non-binary community and the entire queer umbrella, how we can be active in that work. And I think and believe we will remember that we are all created B'Tselem Elohim, in God's reflection, in an image of holiness. And it's in that vein that we will listen to what folks feel and need, and I hope feel safe to ask questions. The way that you're going to ask questions is the chat is going just toward the host, so Rabbi Green and or myself. The chat goes directly to us, so you can put questions anytime. And then when it's time for questions, we will field those and ask, and our panelists can choose to answer if something is meaningful to them to answer. And we're going to really try and learn and grow. And to quote something Rabbi Green says often, I hope that we're able to create a brave space, a space where we can feel seen and heard, and where we feel safe to ask and grow and learn, and with kindness. And it takes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of bravery and courage for these three wonderful friends of mine to share their story. One of them may or may not be present in person, but we'll share via video. And it takes a lot of courage. And so we are going to recognize that and care for that, but also ask our questions so that we can really grow. And what's, I think, really a beautiful thing in these three panelists is that we're going to really hear the nuances and variances within the transgender and non-binary community. We can only speak for ourselves when we tell our story. And so hearing multiple stories helps us know that there are many ways to connect. And I'd like to begin with a prayer from this wonderful book that Rabbi Green connected me with. It's called Where Pride Dwells, and it is a celebration of LGBTQ Jewish life and ritual with Rabbi Denise Egger. And I'd like to begin with an opening prayer. And there's so much in this book that I found incredibly powerful, but I was struck by this version of the Yotzer Or, a prayer that is for this time of night when the evening is falling and when we transition from day to night. And so this is an alternative Yotzer, and I'd like to share it with you. It's called Twilight People. As the sun sinks and the colors of the day turn, we offer a blessing for the twilight. For twilight is neither day nor night, but in between. All of us are twilight people. We can never be fully labeled or defined. All of us have many identities and loves, many genders and none. All of us are in between roles and at the intersection of histories. All of us are crisscrossed paths of memory and destination, streaks of light swirled together. We are neither day nor night. We are both, neither, and all. May the sacred in-between of this evening suspend our certainties, soften our judgments, and widen our vision. May this in-between light illuminate our way to the God who transcends all categories and definitions. We cannot always be defined, but we can always say a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hayotzer et hadim dumim. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who brings on the twilight. So it is my privilege to introduce first Cass Daniels, who two of our panelists are in the same confirmation class as my daughter, Lauren. And Cass and I always joke because when Cass was growing up, he wrote something on a computer of mine that was in my room forever. And it said, Shabbat Shalom. And anyway, it's my pleasure to invite Cass. And Cass can share more of what he does for a living, but Cass is an incredible therapist. Oh, thank you, Rabbi Green, for putting in the chat the book. Cass is an incredible therapist and is going to share a little bit of his story.
Thank you, Holly, and that was beautiful, what you just read, and I am just blown away. I could cry by how many people are here, and I'm already getting emotional, so this is fantastic to see, like I said, so many people. So my name is Cass, and I will pull myself together for a moment, but thank you, Holly, again, for just bringing everybody together and having this space. So I use he, him, his pronouns. I am trans, I am queer, I am a therapist. I don't typically cry during my therapy sessions, so if you're wanting to refer people to me, I will not be crying with your loved ones or you, but yes, I'm just overcome with emotion at seeing you all here. So I will back up for a moment. Like I said, my name is Cass. I use he, him, his pronouns. I got to grow up in Boulder, and I was a part of HaShem. It was so incredible to get to have Holly as a representative for queerness, and to see that representation was so wonderful. And so to be invited back to come and speak with people from HaShem feels so wonderful. So when I was at HaShem, I was being assumed as female. I am obviously, as you see, not female. I am trans masculine, and the work that I do is I support other trans, gender expansive, LGBTQ, whatever your identity is that may not fit within cis heterosexual world. I provide support for those individuals. And I also provide support for family members as well, but I would say that 99% of my caseload is trans and gender expansive people. And this is such an amazing time for all of us to come together because there is so much pain happening. And I will cry again because it's a hard time to be trans. There is a lot of hatred and misunderstanding, and my clients are struggling, and I am struggling helping clients. And so the more we can understand and I think see this and listen to trans people is so important. So I was not anticipating crying, I will tell you that. I do these types of talks all the time, educating about gender identity and sexual orientation. And but I think just being with community like this. So thank you all for being here. And I will pass it off to, I believe it was Sid, who has an amazing video. But that is who I am. And I will pull myself together as other people introduce themselves so that I can answer questions and talk with you all about gender identity. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Cass. I think I'm doing my job really well when people cry. So I think you've modeled for us being absolutely open and the power of community to both heal and unfortunately sometimes hurt. And thank you for sharing that this is a really difficult time. So yes, our second panelist is Sid Flint, who I think might still be here, but is on the road on a cell phone on the way to Durango. So Sid made a video of introduction for themselves. And so I'm going to share my screen and share this video with you all as Sid's means of introduction.
Hi there, everybody. Hopefully I'll be able to join this in real life, but I will be driving to Durango, so I might not have service. I'm pretty sure my grandma's in the crowd. Hi, Grandma. My name is Sid. I've been in the HaShem community since before I was even born. I was B'nai Mitzvah here and everything. Shout out to Rabbi Bronstein, and respect to Rabbi Green and Rabbi Rose. I use they, them pronouns. I use they, them pronouns because I identify as non-binary, and identifying as non-binary can mean a whole bunch of different things for different people. And I know in my 4 years that I've been transgender and non-binary, it's meant different things in those 4 years. It's kind of fun. Gender's always changing. For me, being non-binary means that I am more than just a boy, and I am more than just a girl. I am both boy, girl, and all these other kinds of genders in between. A lot of times my gender feels like a drag queen prince, so maybe that helps you understand me. It changes though, and definitely have moments of all the genders. It makes sense that you refer to me as they, them, because that's plural, and my gender is also plural. It's more than one. It also makes sense that you refer to me as they, them, because that's what you call people when you don't know their gender, and I don't know my gender all the way, so I doubt you could. If it helps, I like to tell my students, I'm in my classroom right now. This is my little wall. Power from our ancestors. I like to tell them I have a little mouse in my pocket. I don't have my side pocket right now, but little mouse, Clarence. So when you're talking about me, you're not just talking about me, you're actually talking about me and Clarence, the mouse. And that's why you have to use plural, they, them pronouns. I love my gender journey story and how I realized my gender and the places that I've been since then. And I've been experiencing a lot of transphobia and a lot of homophobia lately, especially with my sweet, precious middle school students who are figuring out who they are and who are coming from, probably adults that they care about, saying a lot of things that are homophobic and transphobic. So I don't feel safe, I guess, talking about that right now. And I really just want to be seen as, not a boy or a girl. And I'm worried that if I tell you my journey, you'll just put me in the box of, my body parts and what they thought, the gender they thought I was when I was born. So I'm not going to do that today, but maybe one day, because I love my gender journey story and it has my Hebrew name and everything. And I think that's basically it. I hopefully I'll be able to participate. I just want to say something that's been on my mind lately, because I know we're kind of trying to talk about inclusion and how do we make it more open spaces. And for me, it took me till I was 25 to realize I was transgender, to accept that in myself. And this is coming from HaShem, which there's plenty of representation of the rainbow, and I'm just curious. What's been on my mind lately is how do we create spaces, or how do we maintain spaces where young people can feel safe to be who they are, to express who they are, and to explore who they are in gender and sexuality and everything. So that's just kind of like a question I think y'all might want to think about. Thank you so much. I hope I get to be here in person.
I now will never look at Sid without imagining Clarence. And I love that. And I love the question that Sid asked us to think about. How can we be really, really clear about being a safe space for our youth? It's my privilege and honor to invite our third panelist, Brody. And boy, we've been through some life cycles together, haven't we? Watching you grow up, and you have taught me things, and I appreciate you being with us tonight. And I don't know if you're going to share about what you do in your other parts of your life, but if you ever get a chance to ask Brody, ask them, because it's cool stuff. All right, Brody, it's your turn.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, I mean, I feel like kind of like Cass and Sid have both touched on. I mean, you've been such a important part of growing up in HaShem and kind of learning how, how to be a strong, visible person of the community, which has been very cool for me. Hi, y'all. Sorry, my name is Brody. I'm nervous, so I'm going to keep rambling. I'm also stealing Sid's Clarence joke. I think that would be awesome right here. So, or not joke, learning experience. But anyway, it's hard for me to talk about gender without also talking about what I do for a living and for fun. So I, on day-to-day life, I work in music. I've been doing that for probably close to a decade now, ever since I was in college. But then on the what used to be the side, but now is pretty full-time, I'm also a drag and I call it boylesque entertainer, which is kind of helped. I think the main reason I've kind of started to figure out who I am. Sid kind of touched on figuring it out at 25. I just turned 30 and I feel like I'm still figuring it out. I'm a lot closer than I was, but I certainly don't feel like I've got it all myself all figured out. But I started performing in drag about 5 years ago now. And I think that kind of at the start felt like, I created, Brody as kind of an alternate persona. Brody was kind of who I always, the way I got to express how I kind of felt and also play with it and figure out like what parts of that did I want in my day-to-day life and what other parts of it, weren't maybe for me. But it was a safe way to kind of play with gender and kind of get to explore that. And I think since kind of creating Brody Danger, the persona, it's helped me figure out who like Brody Helvetica font is. Actually, I had a friend who kind of used to describe me as, Brody Danger was my stage persona. My legal name was kind of how I was with friends and family and work. And then in the middle somewhere was this lowercase Brody Helvetica font person that I've slowly been trying to figure out. But yeah, since kind of performing like that, I came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago as non-binary, and I've been kind of slowly figuring out what that looks like. At the risk of exposing too much too soon, but I just recently underwent top surgery, which was incredible, and I think that for me was the biggest part of the piece, where I'd grown up always having this just utter discomfort with my chest, and I think once I was able to kind of get rid of that, it's kind of amazing how much space I've had in my brain for other stuff, which of course then has raised a whole other host of issues, like, what do I want to be called in my day-to-day life? And it kind of, when I told people about surgery, I inadvertently, I think, came out in a way I wasn't necessarily prepared for. The response was overwhelming and incredible. But I think at the beginning of it, it was just like I was telling people like, hey, I'm doing this thing, and it would be great to have your support. And then the amount of people that responded with just like, great, but what should we call you now? Or like, great, and great, but what's next? And that kind of threw me for a loop. But I think, all those questions ultimately helped me figure out like that where I'm at in my life is perfect and how I feel right now. And it's been great. I think that might be all for the time being.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What I love, Brody, is that you're willing to be on the journey, and willing to be open that you don't have all the answers, and that it's something that we can kind of accompany you in. But I also want to make sure that you're able to express what, because you said that questions can help you, but I also want to make sure that people sort of know when questions can help and when I think sometimes questions can hurt. And so that might be something that you want to address. I don't know. And that leads me into the first question. So I'm going to ask a series of questions, and then we'll see if there are questions that have been posted to us in the chat. But and we can see who wants to answer. And Sid is in and out, so I'll see who wants to answer. But I think that what all of you refer to, both Cass, all three of you, Cass in your work in mental health with youth and trans adults, and Brody in your talking about this journey and figuring things out, and Sid asking us the question directly. I guess my first question for anyone who wants to answer is, what would you want people to know? What do you want youth to know? What do you want people growing up at HaShem, or people growing up at HaShem who are in their 50s to learn and to know? And that can be both helpful, or you could answer what could be hurtful. But what would you like people to know? Who'd like to answer that?
I can go. I've pulled myself together. No more crying. Thank you, everyone. I think the biggest piece, one of the biggest things for me that I try to impart on family members or my clients is that there is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with being non-binary, with being gender variant. That is not what, because I have clients who come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to be trans. I don't want to be trans. I don't want to do this. This is going to be so hard. Or I have parents who say, I'm so scared. I see these suicide rates. I see how hard life is. And my response to that is yes, right? Life is hard. And I hear you saying that you don't want to be trans, but that is not the problem. You are not the problem. It is how we are treated. It is how gender is talked about. The suicide rate is not high because you are trans, right? You don't want to kill yourself because you are trans. You want to kill yourself because of how we are treated and how we're spoken about, and the dehumanizing rhetoric that is happening now on a daily basis, and the laws that are, right? And so I think what I try to get across is that, and exactly what you said in that speech, Holly, around like we're stardust, we're these in-betweens. We all have uniqueness to us. Even if you think I'm a cis woman, your womanhood looks so different from the woman that is sitting next to you and the other woman that's it, right? We are all so different, and it is beautiful. And that is not something that needs to be fixed or changed or conversion therapy, right? Like embracing that beauty of like, oh my gosh, you know who you are. Or you're as Brody said, like you are figuring out who you are, and how incredible is that? Like, do you want people to not figure out who they are and remain miserable? Or do you want them to be able to figure out who they are and have that space to be embraced? So that's, yeah, I think what can be done is to just realize there's nothing wrong with being trans. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's actually beautiful. I think what's wrong is how it's talked about and how people are treated for who they are. So I'll quiet because I want to hear what maybe other people have to say. But yeah, it's being trans is incredible.
I love that. And you refer to a term cisgender, and this is not, so last week I facilitated and hosted a presentation that helped people understand terms. So if I'm saying to everyone tonight, if there are terms that you're hearing that you can certainly ask, but if there are things that you're hearing that you want to understand, also on the YouTube page, there's a wonderful presentation, kind of, Cass, we were calling it Gender 101, to help people to understand some of the terms that you might hear. And I see that Sid is writing to me in the chat that, yes, we are always becoming, and everyone is always becoming. You know, we talk about B'nai Mitzvah, right, Rabbi Green? It's an act of becoming. It's a very Jewish act, which leads me to my next question. But and then Sid said, gender is fluid for everyone. Exactly. Exactly. Brody or Sid, if you're able to, I don't know, Sid, if you have enough service, but Brody or Sid, would you like to speak to that in any way?
Yeah, I think Cass did great. I think that it's true. I think, you know, the initial kind of feeling is like, you know, I can't even count how many times that I would just look at, you know, my partner and cry and be like, I just feel broken. And it's like, you know, luckily, you know, I have the most incredibly supportive partner that I would not be where I am right now had she not come into my life and helped me realize that I'm not broken, which is the most amazing thing. Which is also not to say, I mean, both my mom and my brother are here and the most also supportive people that I have, and I'm fortunate, beyond fortunate, to have a family that has accepted me unconditionally, and is doing the work to make sure that I continue to feel safe. But you know, just to Cass's point, like, it is incredible to learn that, yeah, we're everything. And if, you know, it's a, you know, my partner always calls me kind of like a hybrid, or like the best of both worlds, which I think is the coolest way to also look at it, where it's like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be one or the other. You can be everything and nothing. I think, you know, sometimes it's funny to hear Cass say, people say they don't want to be trans, because sometimes I feel like I wish I identified on the trans binary, only because I think sometimes it would be easier to explain to people like that I do feel like a man, as opposed to trying to explain to people that I don't feel like a man, but I don't feel like a woman, but I feel like both. And also, more often than not, I feel like neither. So I think just the idea that that's all totally valid, and everyone has their own place on the dial, or their own, you know, and neither is more or less valid than the other. Because I think sometimes in the queer community, like, I identified, you know, before I had kind of, you know, started identifying more as non-binary. It's like, I remember those feelings of not feeling like queer enough. Like, it was cute that I had a girlfriend, but we were monogamous. And so that was like, so 2001 or something. And it was like, that's cool, but like, what are your pronouns? Oh, that's cool, but like, I don't know. Like, and so I just think that there's something to be said for the idea that, yeah, everyone has their place, and everyone, and none of that is unvalid.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I think that we all think other people have everything figured out. And so I think if we've learned anything tonight so far, it's that people are allowed to define for themselves what they know and understand and what they don't. And thank you, Rabbi Green, for putting the link to last week's Gender 101. So thank you. And Sid also shared with me that they want to say that they want to echo how beautiful and special each individual's journey to becoming is. And so, yeah, we have to honor and respect individual journeys, and it's all in the rainbow. It's all under the queer umbrella. And, you know, of course, sexual attraction is different than gender identity and expression, and it's all in the rainbow. So wonderful. So my next question is, for anyone who would answer, is how has Har Hashem specifically, or Judaism in general, affected or influenced your journey? And for good and for other, you know, for in any way you'd like to answer. And so how are you connecting either to Judaism now, or how has it influenced this journey, or if you'd like to share experiences that you've had?
Sure. So growing up at Har Hashem, I think, as I said during my introduction, it was so incredible to have Holly, somebody who was openly not heterosexual, in front of this congregation. And I just recall growing up, I had family members who lived in different parts of the country. And it was like, oh my gosh, your cantor is a lesbian. You know, like it was this thing that was so not common. And it was so awesome to have that and be like, wow. And as Holly mentioned, I grew up with Lauren, her daughter, and I know Marcia. And it was just so cool to see this family. And it was like, wow, Holly can have this amazing life. And that's possible. You don't have to be heterosexual and like be able to have a family. Like, oh my gosh. So being able to come to HaShem for Sunday school every week and have my bat mitzvah. And yes, it was a bat mitzvah. I sometimes have people correct me. They're like, don't you mean bar? And I'm like, it was a bat at that point. But it was so cool to have that representation. And now I told Holly when we were getting together to plan this event that I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and she now goes to a Jewish school in Denver, Temple Emmanuel. And when we were looking for schools, they had a sign. My wife, I didn't get to be there, but my wife tells me, and she came home and she said, oh my gosh, you'll never believe they had a sign that said, trans Jews belong here. And it was, we were already going to go with Temple Emmanuel and it was already great, but that explicit represent that, just like that call out to say, you know, not just like we're inclusive and it's awesome and sure, welcome, like you belong here. That felt so awesome. I was like, I'm sending my daughter there. Like she's going there. And I have not had an experience in the Jewish community where I have felt othered because of my identity. And that could be because of HaShem. That could be because I grew up in Boulder. But I am just so grateful for this community because a lot of my work as well as like talking about who are you is about religious trauma. So many of my clients talk about, I'm afraid that I am not going to get into heaven because I'm queer, or my parents no longer talk to me because they don't think that this is real or that this is a sin. And I never, ever had that. I went to JCC Ranch Camp and it was awesome. And actually a couple of years ago, there was a camp that was put on for trans male adults. And it was at Ranch Camp. And Ranch Camp, JCC welcomed 100 trans men into their space and let us, and what I'm saying, let us be there, right? But like, it's true. They allowed us to be in that space. And I don't know if that would happen in certain religious circles. And so for me, Judaism has actually been really powerful for me. And to just look at Brody and know that Brody and I grew up together and we're at HaShem together. And like, we're both queer and non-binary and gender variant, and like, and knowing Sid was at heart, like it is just so awesome. And obviously could do better in all ways, always. But yeah, I always felt so supported.
Thank you, Cass. Yes, we always can do better. And I will name that there are definitely congregants and folks on this gathering that are currently at HaShem that are transgender or non-binary. And they can please feel free to send me if you want like an opportunity to speak as well. All right, thank you so much, Cass. Brody, will you share a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so funny, it's so true where it's like growing up in Boulder and HaShem, I think sometimes it gives you a false sense of the real world. And I mean that in like the best way, where it's like totally like being surrounded by, so many people that, aren't, cis het people is incredible. I will say, I think two things are on my mind for this. They're different ends of the spectrum, but one of them is I'm in the process of trying to legally change my name. And I've been having such a struggling with it so hard to try to figure out what does that look like, and a way to kind of honor everything, and honor my parents, and honor, that naming is such an important part of our faith. And I was also named at HaShem. And so it's to kind of try to figure out the meshing of that, and what feels right and still makes me feel like I'm, honoring those that have come before me, has kind of been an interesting thing to think about lately. I think I'm almost there. So stay tuned. But on the other end of the spectrum, I had an interesting experience at the high holidays. It was a number of years ago, and I feel like my biggest thing growing up was, I think part of the reason that it took me a long time to kind of come out both as queer and then also later on, was because, so many people kind of feel like they want to tell you who you are, and they assume things about you. And I remember it happened when I was 15 or 16, where we were at Thanksgiving dinner. My cousin looked across the table at me and called me a lesbian. And I didn't speak to him for 5 years, because I was so how dare he? But then years later, I think I laughed and high-fived him or something. But it took a long time, and it's hard when someone is coming at you like that, trying to tell you they know these intimate details that you haven't figured out for yourself. And so, and I had a similar situation at the high holidays, where for the number of years, I never have identified. I've never been super feminine. My hair's always been short, except for a brief period where I felt like I had to assimilate, which was high school and early college. But even when I cut my hair again, it's I always would wear a dress for high holidays, because there was something about that where it was if that was your assigned at birth gender, it was my mom's from the South. I grew up you dress up for services, and dressing up as, when I identified more as a woman, was wearing a dress. And so it was the first year that I finally was I can't do this anymore. I don't want to. I was always spent the whole time in services scanning the crowd, looking at all the guys, and looking at what they got to wear to services and how much more comfortable they looked. But so I finally, with my first year, I'd worn pants and a nice button down shirt, and I was anxious about it the whole time, but felt better ultimately. But then someone came up to me after the services and was trying to have this conversation with me, and I think that they were trying. I can't remember exactly what they were saying, but they were alluding to the fact that they thought I was trans, and they were trying to kind of be well, you're obviously da-da-da. And finally they did. And I kept looking at them please, what are you trying to say to me? Because I do not know what you're trying to get at, and finally they looked at me well, you're obviously gay, and looked up and down, and I blacked out after that. I don't 100% remember what I did or said, because it was I think I looked at my mom and was I gotta go, and drove away. And to be honest, I don't think I went back to services for a really, really, really long time, because it had taken so much in me to finally not feel like I had to wear a dress, and to feel like I could dress the way I wanted to for services. And I was just so put off. And the fact was that I kind of figured out that part of me. I knew I was more comfortable in pants, but I didn't, I didn't understand why this stranger was trying to tell me I was trans, when I didn't know I was trans. And not to mention the fact that, I guess my one word of advice would be maybe don't assume someone is trans, and try to talk to them about it for a host of reasons, discomfort and safety being the top two I can think of. But of course, now I'm able to look back on that story and, be sometimes I'm annoyed, because I'm man, if only someone could have told me. And it's I guess they did. But, and there's there's something to be said for it. But yeah, it was the first time I was made to feel unsafe not unsafe, but not unsafe and not unwelcome, but just not, but also different. And I'd never felt different at HaShem, and I'd always loved coming to services and being with my family, and and being in that, I'd been doing it, obviously, we joined the temple when I was in 3rd grade. So, I'd spent every single high holiday season in that church. And so it was interesting, and it put into question a lot about Judaism for me, and not necessarily, and I think it was also, I was in my early 20s. So, there was just a lot of figuring out of a lot of things. but yeah, it still sticks out. And I think maybe I've come back for Yom Kippur, but yeah, I don't really know that I have an end to that story necessarily, because it's still like, I'm still, I think, figuring it out. But it's great that we're doing something, it's great to be having this discussion, that so people can also know, like, you never know what's going on in someone's life, obviously, and clothes are a great indicator, but not an end all be all. And, I don't know. Holly, jump in with something more wise than I was.
Brody, I appreciate you sharing that story. And I think that, the balance between asking someone their pronouns and feeling safe to ask that, and not telling someone who they are and making assumptions about them by how they look, is a really important lesson. And so I find that if I say my pronouns are, she and her, what are yours, that's a safe way of asking that question. And it's asking, and it's not telling someone who they are and what they are, which I'm so sorry that was a painful experience. And I appreciate you sharing that, honestly.
Yeah.
Sid is participating through the chat, and Sid, you'll let me know if that you want to participate, if you can unmute. But I'm going to share a few things that Sid said in response to this question about HaShem and Judaism. And Sid said, one of the things that has stuck with me through my experience with Judaism is the openness to question and push back. And pushing at boundaries and reshaping boxes is what being queer is all about. Then Sid said, I have a similar struggle with my original and Hebrew name, which I hold so dear and which often tells people the wrong story about my gender. So there's definitely, one's birth name or dead name might hold that connection to Judaism, and it's finding that balance with your story and who you are and your name. And then Sid, the last thing Sid said in this is that one of the ways to not assume anyone's gender or transness in an inclusive way is to ask everyone to share their pronouns. I had not read that when I said that. Okay, and I'm getting some questions in the chat, and I will come to those. I see people are asking really wonderful questions, so I will come to that. And I also saw that there is a participant. I think it's Ben Johnson. When I see about Ben, Ben Price probably. So there's two Bens present that might have wished to speak, and so you're welcome, Sid. So Ben, if you want to answer that question with a sentence or two, Ben Price, you can unmute yourself and share. And Ben is a member of Neve Kodesh and also comes to HaShem often as well.
Hi, what was the question that you wanted?
Did you want to share how your Judaism has affected your transgender journey, or do you want, or in a few sentences, would you like to share about yourself?
Well, the Jewish experience was worlds better than my old. I converted, I've lost count, 12 years ago. And I'm actually with Pardes Levavot.
No, sorry.
The other one. But the Jewish experience has been wonderful. So much more welcoming. The Christians actually threw me out. I was rejected to my face because I was different. Born female, just had my 25th birthday of changing over. So changed over at 27, and finding my way and finding who I wanted to be as God's child. What did God want from me? In everything that it gave me, including a beautiful singing voice, and to have to give that back in losing that, because I went from mezzo soprano to second tenor baritone and had a complete voice change along with a complete body change. Top surgery was awesome. It was so freeing. I'm so thankful to have fixed that, to become more who I who I believed I was supposed to walk this world in and what I was supposed to share. And, you know, God gave me the gifts and said, you have a voice, you have a heart, share it, be out there, love people, keep putting your heart out there, even in spite of the rejection. And, you know, I lost jobs, I lost members of my family. Some of them I didn't get back, but discrimination in the workplace, rampant. Judgments in the Christian community, massive. Where they get off thinking they can judge, I'd like to know. And the whole Jewish experience has been the complete opposite of that. It's been wonderful, and to meet various rabbis, to interview rabbis at like the Jewish festival, and I said, well, I'm transgendered. What's your position on that? And one rabbi said, well, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. I have no right to judge you. It's your relationship with God. I'm not in a position to say, be who you are, be who God meant you to be, who you believe God meant you to be, and shine your light and love people in spite of some people's responses. Keep putting your heart out there and make a difference in people's lives, one interaction at a time. So I want to thank you, Holly, for being a visible member of the gay community and providing a safe, warm, loving space. I've never been judged in the Jewish community like I was in the Christian community. So it's just been awesome to be here.
Thank you, Ben. And you've been a shining light in the world, and I've seen it and been the beneficiary of it. And I thank you for your openness and you're willing to share as well. So thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to go to the questions in the chat that I'm seeing lots of things. But I think I'm going to address something that I saw in the chat, and I'm going to take the liberty of being the first person to answer it. But give me 1 minute, I will get there. So the last question that I'll ask of our panelists is, we've spoken about the Jewish community, and we've talked about how sometimes oppressive structures can be reinforced, and how I do believe the Reformed Jewish community and the renewal communities are working really, really hard to work against that. But where are voices being left out? Where do you see in the greater world and the Jewish world, but in the greater world, where are voices being left out, and how can we add those voices to the conversation? So, Cass or Brody?
Sure, yeah. At the risk of generalizing, I think transgender expansive voices are not being heard anywhere. I think that this space that we've created right now is really incredible to have a bunch of trans individuals in a space talking. That does not happen. We are often being talked about, and our humanity is being debated by individuals who do not have our lived experience or who cannot understand what we are going through. I think allies are incredible. We need allies. We need all of you to be allies, and we need your support because we can't do this alone. I think right now we're what, 2% of the population, but for some reason we're getting a lot of the attention, the discrimination, the marginalization. So when I see articles being written about trans contagion, or how all of a sudden there's all these trans people and we're losing our women, and there's, you know, our bathrooms are no longer safe, right? I'm seeing those things being written by cisgender heterosexual people. So if you are reading those things, please consider who is saying it, because if you want to hear from a trans person, we have a very different view of what's going on in the world. And as I said, there's only 2% of us apparently in the population. It's probably more than that. And so you might not know any trans people. So it might be scary, or you might be reading these things, listening to that and believing it. But please listen to lived experiences. And we need to be amplified everywhere. Anywhere you can think of, please raise us up. Using our pronouns and our names is really awesome. That's a great first step, but that's not enough. It would be so cool to see cisgender people like speak up about, and now I'm contradicting myself. I'm saying let trans people speak more, but also you all speak more about trans stuff as well. Because it can't just be us, but we need to be everywhere. We need more representation, and our voice needs to be heard in all places.
Amen, amen. And that's, people always ask, how can I be an ally? How can I be an accomplice? How can I work hard? And so thank you for giving us those tools, Cass. That was really, really helpful. Brody, did you want to address this question?
If anyone works in healthcare or insurance, it's a really, truly terrible, terrible place to try, or not to try, to be trans and to try to get care. Yeah, I'm fighting with my insurance currently, trying to get my surgery deemed medically necessary because couldn't I have tried something else? They actually said that. So yeah, I mean, I think anywhere knowing that, but I have this amazing rep who's her son is trans. And so it's like the second that I got to her, she was like, oh my God, I've got you, and held my hand, and we've been fighting for 4 months now. But yeah, just kind of being aware that like, I don't know how harmful I think language can be too, where it's like, if someone tells you, I have a hard time advocating for myself, and I'm trying to get better. But like the amount of times I know it's ingrained in us, but like ma'am and sir and miss aren't always words of respect. They can actually truly just, I can't tell you how many times I've come home and my partner's been like, how's your day? And I'm like, let me tell you how many awful people I spoke to on the phone and hung up on. So it's tough, and it's tough. And to Cass's, bathroom note, let me tell you who the actual unsafe people are in bathrooms. So anywhere that you can advocate for gender neutral bathrooms is my new also rally cry. I cannot tell you how excited I get, I never used to necessarily think about it twice, but we were in Arkansas recently, which is also not a great place to be currently, but anywhere you can walk into something that doesn't necessarily out you instantly feels good. So tell your local coffee shop. I don't know.
Yeah. You alluded to safety in the bathroom, and single stall, all gender bathrooms are a way to help everyone be safe. And I want to note that someone wrote, Alice Gansfield wrote, how inappropriate to walk up to a stranger and discuss that person's sexuality. Anyone would be offended by that. So yes, pronouns, no sexuality, and telling people. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go to a few of the things that people have written in the chat, and Rabbi Green, if you have other things that you're seeing, you can chime in as well. But the one thing that I wanted to address first, so someone asked about the word queer, and I'll read his question. While I have a working understanding of queer in the gender spectrum, to most people the word queer has a pejorative implication. Couldn't another operating term other than queer be chosen by the multi-gender community that would be more positive? And it's such a good question, and I wanted to address it first because it's something that I feel pretty strongly about. That well, first of all, I do think it's a generational thing. I think that there are people my age and above, probably we'll go with above my age, that struggle with that word because it absolutely has been used to hurt very deeply. And people below my age tend to embrace that word more easily. And it reminds me of things that we as Jewish people have done to embrace things that have been used against us. So there are sometimes, well, I'll take, for example, a modern example, the space lasers. That was used against us. And some people are turning it into, Mazel Tov and Space Laser Society. So that's a funny example, but it's turning around something that was painful and making it funny. Or we had to wear yellow stars during the Holocaust, and we didn't take away Jewish stars. We turned it around and we said, this is who I am. So the beautiful thing about the word queer that it was turned around, and also it can serve as that umbrella term. Brody spoke of, I don't know where sometimes I fit in the rainbow, and Sid as well, or spoke of, I'm all the rainbow, but that it's all, it's all in the umbrella of that word queer. So, so Cass or Brody, that I needed to answer that. Do either of you want to address that question?
Yeah, that's great, Holly. Yes, it's definitely, I think, a generational thing. I used to intern at at Rainbow Alley, which is an LGBTQ youth center, and the youth were yelling around queer all over the place. But there was also what's called SAGE, and it's for older adults, and they would be like, "Get over here! Don't you use that word? Like, you cannot," right? And so there's different perspectives, and I think our generation and earlier generations have really reclaimed that as like, maybe I don't want to say LGBTQIA. That's a lot of letters. And I oftentimes hear a lot of people being like, I can't remember all those letters. I'm like, you can say queer because it pretty much encapsulates the exact same thing. It is an umbrella term for being non-cisgender, non-heterosexual. So yeah, I think it definitely depends on what group you are with when you are using that term, because some may be very offended by that, and they have that right to be. This reminds me of some transsexual. That is a word that so many transgender people do not like. Do not call me a transsexual. That is not okay. I know a lot of people in the older generation who are like, I am a transsexual, and that is who I am, and don't tell me I can't use that word. So language is so personal. And so just being careful too around like letting people self-define themselves.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Anyone else want to respond to that? Brody, do you want to? You don't have to.
No, I think that's good. I mean, I think it's interesting because I feel like that was the first term I kind of more identified with than anything. Where like, when I was, younger and, my dad's gay. And I think that it's been interesting to kind of see the generational differences between him and I, but also like recognize the differences between sexuality and gender too, where it's like, my dad can be very binary in his like way of thinking in terms of like, because when he was growing up, it was like, there was this or that or this or that. And like, certain words I'll say it, I'll be like, Dad, like I would never say that. Like, so it's interesting. But yeah, I just think like we touched on, queer became a kind of umbrella term that I feel like our generation really latched onto that feels safe. And I need to remember to speak more carefully sometimes because it's happened a few times recently where like I've said that to someone and have been met with the like I would never say that. But so it's good to remember.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to share a response from Sid, and then I'm going to ask one more question in the chat. And then if people want to send more questions, or if maybe if Rabbi Green has received some as well. So Sid answered this idea of being an accomplice. I spoke of being an ally, being an accomplice in this hard work of the world. So Sid said, to me, being an accomplice means working with me and anyone else who has an oppressed identity that lines up with their privilege to break the system that is actively working to keep me out. I like the word accomplice because you have to be tricky. The system and status quo is strong and oppressive. How can we work together to glitch it out? I love how you said that. How can we push on boundaries and help others question their assumptions? How can we work together to rewrite the rules and rewrite the world? Well spoken, Sid. I think I need to copy your words, and paste it somewhere where I guess I'll have the chat afterwards as well. Thank you, Sid, for helping us know that we can be tricky. we can work hard. I love that. So my last question that I've seen so far is to ask you all, what about the B'nai Mitzvah process? So back to the Jewish, yeah, back to this. What about the B'nai Mitzvah process especially helped you grow, and what felt constraining? And hold on to that for a second, because this other question from before that I'm remembering kind of connects. Maybe what parts of our liturgy are difficult for you? So, so the questions are kind of what inside Jewish liturgy and Jewish prayer might be difficult for you, and what about your B'nai Mitzvah process, or what about your B'nai Mitzvah process helped you grow or felt constraining and difficult?
Yeah, I think that at the time that I was 13 and having my bar mitzvah, I wasn't allowing myself to even go near gender. It was something that I didn't feel safe even like questioning myself. And so I don't think I entirely, it didn't impact me, but I can completely understand how that can be incredibly difficult for youth who maybe aren't out or who are still figuring it out. And it's like, what do I have to decide to have a bar mitzvah, a bat mitzvah? Can I have a b'nai mitzvah? What does that mean? And so for me, luckily at that point, I didn't feel incredibly impacted by it, but I can imagine the impact. But something I was somewhat impacted by that was interesting is my cousin got married recently, and she is Orthodox, and they had a separate, during the party, there was separation between men and women. And I identify as a trans man on the binary, so I went with the men. But that felt so, it was a new thing for me. I was surrounded by all these men, and it was this experience. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm with all these men. And I know that I don't think that happens in Reform Judaism, but thinking about in other sects of Judaism, how there is so much separation between men and women. And it's like, where would a non-binary person, do they have to stand in the middle? Like, so just thinking about those things is really interesting.
And yeah, we're working hard to address that, because we absolutely, you know, as young people identify younger and younger and feel brave and safe to name their identity younger, we are working, Rabbi Green and I and the Jewish community is working on creating space for that. So yeah, exactly. Rodi, do you want to address that?
Yes, I much like Cass, I feel I had a similar experience where I don't think it was on my mind at the time. And so it's kind of interesting where like, I honestly hadn't actually thought about it until you said it, but like looking back, like thinking about it now, it's like, oh my gosh, I think I would cringe if I got so many like congrats, you're a woman cards. But what impacted me the most for my bat mitzvah was I gave a speech recently. It was really cool. I was asked to be a part of this American drag show up in Boulder. And at first it started as we were going to read other people's stories, and then it kind of snowballed into we were going to write our own, and we were going to give our own kind of like whatever we wanted to be, whether it was about performing or ourselves. And I wrote this piece. And all I could think about was writing, look up and pause, and remembering everything you taught me during my those counseling sessions, which I don't know if that was what you hoped I would take from that, but I want you to know it was really, really brilliant advice. And I wrote LUAP on multiple times throughout this page. So thank you.
You literally just made my life complete. So thank you for that.
I feel bad that I don't know what Rabbi Bronstein asked me about the sermon she gave, but I remember that. But yeah, so thank you.
My work is done. No,
your work is done. Forget it.
Thank you. We should all look up and pause.
We should.
Always. And then I want to say what Sid said in response to this question. Sid said, I'm thinking about how to help young people embrace themselves earlier And I think that no 13-year-old truly knows their full gender or sexuality. What if part of the B'nai Mitzvah was an exploration of identity? What if everyone had B'nai Mitzvah or a non-binary name instead of a bar or bot, just a thought? Yeah, so we are working to make it as part of identity, but I think that's a really important question, is to include gender identity in that exploration, Sid. So thank you for that thought. And like I said, we're working. There are ways to call up someone to the Torah, not using non-binary language, but it's a work in progress. So those are the questions that I received. I want to say out loud because people can't see it. Many things like much gratitude and appreciation to the brave, beautiful, courageous, insightful panelists for sharing with everyone and facilitating everyone's growth in a very good way. So lots of notes of gratitude that I want to make sure that you all really hear. Rabbi Green, did you see things in the chat that I have not seen? No. Okay. All right. So I guess what I will ask is if each of you would like to share a final thought, and then I'm going to give my final thought and a closing blessing, a closing prayer. So yes, many Yasher Koachs in the chat. Beautiful. So Cass or Brody or Sid, do you want to make a closing? Your final statement. That sounds, you can speak. Let me rephrase that. I hope that this is the beginning of a conversation and that we can maybe not have all the answers today, but we can begin asking lots of questions. So I hope this is the beginning of a conversation, but do you have things that you'd like to say at the end of our time together tonight?
Sure, yeah, thank you. I just want to say thank you all for being here and taking the time out of your night to learn and listen to trans and non-binary people speak. Because as I was saying, that doesn't often happen. So it's just it has warmed my heart so much that you are all here. And also just to market myself a little, I am a therapist. So if you have anybody who needs support or is needing help, whether you are trans or you are a family member, please feel free to reach out to me. I am here to help and support and provide resources, anything that I can do to help another trans person live in a safer world, I want to do. So just thank you all for being here.
Thank you. And if you want Cass's information, it's Cass Daniels, but folks can email me and I can put you in touch with Cass's permission. I can do that. Great. Thank you, Cass. Brody, do you want to say anything? Rabbi Green, you are like speedy.
I wanted Cass to be my therapist, but because we go far back, it was a conflict of interest. But I just want everyone to know that I also wanted Cass to be my therapist. So hit him up. No, I think just that I vowed, at the end of last year, I kind of vowed that 2021 would be all about living authentically. And that was kind of my New Year's resolution, or just hope for myself, for the world. And I think, thank you for giving me this space, and for all of y'all for coming out and, wanting to learn with us, because it's only helping. I want to try to figure out how to also kind of help others, because I wish when I was younger that I had someone like myself or Cass or Sid to look up to, because I often, I've as Cass and I have reconnected, I'm like, man, like how cool would it have been if we had been like this in high school? Like how much fun, or where would we be in terms of our life, journeys? So yeah, also I'm going to be guest counseling, camp counseling, if you will, at Camp Indigo this summer in Boulder. I'm doing hopefully a performance kind of class. Cass is cheering, so jump in if you know more about it than I do too.
Camp Indigo, yes, sign your kids up.
Yeah, it should be super fun. So a friend of mine, we're going to do kind of like a performance kind of, we're not 100% sure what it looks like. Otherwise I would be giving more tangible information, but it's really cool. And I think that would have been an awesome thing that I wish I could have gone to when I was younger. So look it up. It's for like it's like, essentially a camp for trans all across the spectrum kids to explore themselves.
Fantastic. Amazing. And I believe that the Jewish camps are making room for oh, Sid, there you are. Do you want to talk? Nope, your bandwidth is low.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Go try now.
Yeah. Okay, I turn on my video. That's a kids only class, huh, Brody? I can't go. Too old. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, but we'll do it in Drag Intensive 101 instead.
Okay. I also want to say thank you. I want to say thank you so much for holding this space and for like being the facilitator in a beautiful and open way. Can you hear me? Am I cutting out? Okay, just make a face or something. I want to thank.
Oh, and with that, you cut out.
Oh. Okay.
Sid, I think you need to type it to me, okay? Because you are cutting out. Because there's not lots of internet near Durango. Just kidding. I don't know about that. Sorry, Sid. I think you'll have to write in. So yes, Rabbi Green has put in the chat a few resources. Rabbi Green, do you want to name what you've put here, or do you want me to share about it?
Just, I tried to stay out. I'm sorry. I want to say thank you to you folks for sharing, and thank you to you folks for coming and listening. In the chat, a couple of resources for advocacy, information from the Reform Movement's Rabbinical Conference about its own statement relating to the rights of transgender and gender nonconforming individuals. There is a conversation also working with the Boulder JCC about Abby Stein, who is pretty remarkable human being. And it's called My Journey from Ultra-Orthodox Rabbi to Transgender Woman. And that's coming up shortly, maybe next week, I think. Right, Lauren? Nod? Yeah? Yes, she said yes. And then to show where the Jewish community is, a couple of little pieces, a link for our own website about inclusion, about who we aspire to be in our vision statement. And lastly, just a couple of good resources, links. Keshet is an incredible organization. Keshet is a rainbow in Hebrew. And the Wider Bridge is doing similar work in Israel. So those are the links for those that are inclined.
And then Brody put the link for the Camp Indigo, and I can't copy and paste it for everyone. It won't let me. So if you are able to do that, Rabbi Green.
I can find it. And I got a message from Sid. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
Remember, the journey is never over. Our journey of unlearning our biases and learning how to be accomplices is never over, but we get to keep on learning and growing. How special is that?
Amen. And so I'd like to offer a closing prayer also from this book, Where Pride Dwells. We are all created B'Tselem Elohim, as a reflection of God. We are all created as an expression of God's loving kindness. We are all created with love. Love is what brings us into being. Love is what we are given so that we can share it with others. We exist so that we can love. At this moment, as we've been together and shared a piece of these beautiful souls, these neshamas who've shared with us and told us about their journey, I offer my thanks. I offer my thanks to you, God, for giving me the ability to love. I offer my thanks to you, God, for the gift of these wonderful human beings, all of us. I offer my thanks to you, God, for their uniqueness and beauty. I offer my thanks to you, God, for giving them the strength to be honest, May this step on their journey and our journeys to finding love in this world, on which we are all accomplices and all accompany each other along the way. Adonai Yishmor Zeitcha Uloecha Me'ata va'ad olam. May God guard and guide you on your journey, all of us on our journeys, now and forever. Amen, amen. Thank you all so much. You can email me if people have questions or concerns. Thanks, friends.